Russia is developing a new generation of weapons that will replace the recently tested Burevestnik and Poseidon. Vladimir Putin said this on Tuesday. And Donald Trump ordered the immediate start of nuclear tests in the United States, which puzzled his own military and provoked Russia into making tough statements in response. What is the connection between these events, and how are new weapons tested today? We'll talk about this, as well as a new rescue story, after a brief summary of positive news. Another batch of Su-35S fighter jets has been delivered to the troops. Another batch of Su-34 fighter bombers has been handed over to the troops. At the Sevmash plant in Severodvinsk, the nuclear submarine Khabarovsk has been rolled out of the slipway. It will become the first regular carrier of the Poseidon unmanned vehicle with a nuclear power unit. The Kalashnikov concern has mastered serial production of the 9M340 anti-aircraft missile for the Krona air defense system. At the Anirsky shipbuilding plant, the oil skimmer Eco-1 was launched. In Buryatia, construction has begun on a mining and processing plant for beryllium extraction. In the Murmansk region, a rare earth element mining site has been restored. The first stage of the new rolling mill has been launched at the Cherpovets metallurgical plant. A furniture factory has been opened in Moscow. During Tuesday's awards ceremony for Burevestnik and Poseidon developers, Vladimir Putin said Russia is already creating new weapons based on technologies tested on these products. Exactly which ones have not been specified yet, but apparently we are talking about nuclear weapons and nuclear power units for them. After hearing about Russia's successful launches, Donald Trump ordered immediate United States nuclear tests, leaving his military puzzled. What he meant remains unclear today. After all, no one in the world has conducted actual nuclear explosions for quite some time, and the tests of the Russian Poseidon and Burevestnik are in no way considered nuclear, since they did not carry any warheads and were tested only as delivery systems. To somehow cover up the incompetence of the American president, the Pentagon, or the Department of War, as it is now called, conducted a test launch of a Minuteman III ballistic missile without a nuclear warhead on Wednesday, stating that it was a planned event. In response, Vladimir Putin ordered a proposal to be made regarding the possibility of preparing for nuclear weapons tests. Russia raised the stakes, clearly having trump cards that are still hidden for now. But what kind of tests can we conduct, and do we really need to detonate bombs for research in our time? Let's figure it out. On July 16, 1945, at 5:30 in the morning in the Alamogordo area of New Mexico, the Americans carried out the first test explosion of an atomic bomb in human history called Gadget. Although there was no certainty that it would explode, the atomic mushroom cloud rose into the sky and marked the beginning of a new Brika time, and less than a month later, on August 6 and 9, the atomic bombs Little Boy and Fat Man, whose designs were almost identical to the Gadget, were dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics responded on August 29, 1949, when our atomic bomb with a yield of about 22 kilotons was detonated at the Semipalatinsk test site in Kazakhstan. Since then, test detonations have become common practice. They helped to improve weapons and served as a demonstration of power. However, in recent decades, they have faded away. Why? Every such explosion has its consequences. Americans are still being flooded with lawsuits from the residents of the Azure Islands, who happen to become a testing ground. Over time, public pressure became so strong that they stopped detonating bombs. 2 international treaties banning live nuclear tests were introduced, and although formally they are no longer in force today, the members of the nuclear club have still stopped the testing practices of the Cold War era. But to be honest, there are practical and pragmatic reasons. First, Computers appeared that made it possible to model explosions and their consequences with high accuracy. Second, maintaining test sites and conducting detonations there became expensive. When Trump ordered tests last week, it quickly became clear that the main test site in Nevada had been mothballed since the 1990s and was not ready to carry out the task. Although in recent years there has been more and more talk about resuming nuclear detonations, in reality, no country wants to be the first to do it, especially since in addition to computer modeling, other research methods have also emerged. But why are they needed at all? The first reason is the need to check the condition of old warheads. They've never been detonated. They're stored in arsenals. But as we mentioned in episode No. 680, no one knows if the plutonium in them has retained its properties. That's why, usually, a microscopic dose of the substance is taken from a particular batch and detonated at an underground test site to study its properties. During such an explosion, a self-sustaining chain reaction does not occur, and such experiments are called subcritical. They do not formally violate any treaties. This spring, the Americans planned to carry out another such detonation, but for some reason, they didn't. Probably so as not to provoke Russia and China. The second reason why real-life experiments are still necessary is the development of new types of nuclear weapons. Here, even more, no one wants to reveal themselves early, so the topic is closed. And no, it's impossible to secretly conduct such explosions, even underground these days, because there are many ways to detect them. That's why a fragile balance is still maintained on the planet. However, a person wouldn't be human if he didn't try to come up with a clever way around the established rules. That's where things get really interesting. Subcritical underground explosions provide insight into the suitability of plutonium, but they can't be used to model new processes necessary for developing modern weapons. To prevent large detonations, scientists develop special laser installations. A capsule the size of a pea containing a specific nuclear material is placed in the center of the sphere. Powerful laser beams are directed at it from all sides at the same time, creating what's called an implosion, a process similar to what compresses the plutonium core in a nuclear bomb. As a result, a microexplosion occurs, the parameters of which are studied using special sensors. Then the data is processed with computer modeling, allowing scientists to study explosive processes without the need to detonate multi-ton bombs. Such a laser installation itself is a very complex device, available to only a handful of countries. The most powerful so far is California's American-owned National Ignition Facility complex. However, its system cannot provide the necessary uniformity of irradiation of the central capsule, so its experiments are limited. There are similar facilities in Russia, but right now we are building what the Americans themselves called the Tsar laser, the most powerful system in history. It's called UFL-2M and will have 192 laser channels to evenly irradiate targets from all sides, and at the same time, it will have 1.5 times more energy than the American system. This will allow us to model processes in nuclear weapons at a fundamentally new level, as well as to study thermonuclear fusion. The facility is modular and is already partially operational and functioning, but it will be fully operational in 2030. However, the real science fiction begins not even here, but beyond the boundaries of the physics we are used to. And we're preparing something in this direction as well. At the UFL-2M facility and similar sites, lasers strike nuclear targets for scientists to study their reactions under classical physics. But what if you hit not the material, but the vacuum with lasers? It sounds absurd, but in fact, it's very promising. In the UFL-2M, the laser pulse lasts 10 nanoseconds, that's 10 billionths of a second. It seems incredibly fast, but in reality, it's slow. The idea is to use a 10 femtosecond pulse that's 10 quadrillionths of a second and hit the vacuum with such a beam to make it explode. Yes, a vacuum isn't completely empty as many believe. It's a complex environment where virtual particle-antiparticle pairs are constantly created and destroyed. This occurs so quickly that they're unobservable under normal conditions. But if you ignite them with ultra-short laser pulses, forcing them to emit electromagnetic waves, new electron-positron pairs will start to be generated, leading to a cascade of particles and radiation that can be detected. At that moment, a new science will emerge: nuclear photonics, the use of intense light to control nuclear processes. This is the new physics that promises incredible discoveries. All that's left is to create such a fast laser system which no one is capable of yet. Dima Torzak. However, Russia is working hard in this direction. Our femtosecond system under development is called XCells. Part of its equipment has already been manufactured and is being tested at the National Center for Physics and Mathematics. By 2030, the first 2 laser channels with a total power of 100 petawatts will be built, and then the remaining 10 channels will be completed, bringing the peak power to the exawatt level. This will allow us to be the first in the world to break the vacuum and create matter from energy rather than the other way around. This will open up new fundamental laws, help us better understand nuclear processes, and of course lead to practical results such as new energy sources, new materials, and inevitably new types of weapons, which ordinary people can't even imagine yet. And to be honest, just thinking about it makes your blood run cold. This is what Russian scientists are working on today, and compared to their work, a nuclear bomb explosion at a test site seems like a trivial matter. However, judging by everything, Russia is ready for such an explosion as well. Already last year, our test site on the Novaya Zemlya archipelago restored its readiness for full-scale nuclear tests. This week, Defense Minister Andrei Belousov confirmed this readiness. Obviously, if the Americans continue to stir up hysteria, we will respond with demonstrative tests. You now realize that the most important and interesting things happen in scientific labs, not at test sites. We will keep an eye on developments in the next episodes, so be sure to subscribe to the Vremya VPeard channel on any convenient platform.